Sorry about the late start. We had some technical difficulties, but we're here now, joined by Natalie, by Rachel, and Charlotte. Um, the idea of these is to get a few everyday trans folk together and just talk about the things that affect us day to day. So none of us do this for a living, as you'll probably find out. Um, and each time, we're going to take a couple of news items or events that have happened that are of interest to us, and we're just going to chat about them and see where it takes us. Um, so as this first live show, I thought the best thing to do is introduce nGendr, and to do that, here's Natalie.
Hi. Yeah, so um, the purpose of nGendr is to give a kind of an opportunity for people who are trans or non-binary to be able to kind of talk about what they're kind of passionate about or what they're interested in or just their experiences or anything that they want to talk about. But we kind of identified that a lot of the trans people you hear from in the public eye are not necessarily all that representative of the kind of people that we all are. It tends to be people who look like, and people you see in media are generally kind of pretty people anyway. But we wanted to kind of give a bit of a platform to people who aren't necessarily like that. So we started this up, and as Lisa said, we're not professionals, but we just kind of wanted to make something happen. And what we're looking for really is for people to help us out. So if you've got something you want to shout about, or something you've been successful at, or something you're really interested in, then get in touch with us, and you can submit something. It could be writing, it could be a video, it could be any sort of art, and we'll try and share that through this channel, and just get the stuff out there that you're passionate about, and that's what this is all about. We're trying a few different things. Obviously, this is new. We'll see how this goes, and we're going to learn from this and improve it. And we've had a few technical difficulties already, and there's a few more still to come, I expect. But we'll get there. But yeah, get in touch and see what you can do. There's loads of stuff on the website that gives you an idea of the kind of stuff you might be able to help us out with. But yeah, it'd be great to hear from you.
Thank you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. So a couple of weeks ago, the Mail on Sunday ran a beautiful article on the front page: sex changed men to give birth on the NHS. They go on to say the NHS is told to give out 5,000. Sorry, beg your pardon. That's the next story. So dozens of transgender men are having their eggs frozen in NHS clinics. Treatment means that a British trans man could soon become a parent. In rare circumstances, a man could become pregnant and give birth. And the Daily Mail on Sunday go on to criticise the NHS for providing this. A few days later, the Daily Mail also ran a story: NHS told to give out 5,000 per annum lifestyle drug to prevent HIV. So this is PrEP. This is for primarily gay men to prevent HIV infection. And again, the Daily Mail criticising it. And what do we think about this? Do we think it's an attack on us? Do we think it's criticism of the NHS? Charlotte?
Oh, well, hi Lisa. So I think this basically boils down to this fallacy of lifestyle choices. So particularly the Daily Mail and a few other tabloids questioning our basic rights to any treatment that any other people would actually have based on this notion of a lifestyle choice. So in the case of the trans man wanting to have a child, it's a perfectly normal thing to want to have. Most people want to have a child. And the case here, though, is that eggs getting frozen. Now, is this something that's above and beyond what any other person may be entitled to on the NHS? Well, let's take an example of a woman who, for whatever reason, needs to have ovaries removed. Say she's got ovarian cancer or needs a hysterectomy for whatever reason. At that point, she's given the choice: would you like to have children in the future? If there's a good doctor asking these questions. And a lot of the time, even if they don't necessarily want them, it's having this this kind of think of the word, this but the peace of mind. That's the peace of mind that the eggs are frozen so that she can have a child in the future that's her own biological offspring if she so chooses. Why not trans man? A trans man is having a procedure, life-saving, you could argue, because without transition, it's been demonstrated that we're much more likely to be depressed and attempt suicide. So to undergo transition is life-saving. So before these procedures are done, I think the question should be asked, do you intend to have children? And then you're given the same choice to be able to freeze eggs. In these situations, the uterus is left intact, so these men can carry their own children. Why shouldn't they? If there's a cost to the NHS in maintaining this pregnancy in terms of prenatal classes, monitoring, going through the birthing process, postnatal care, these are things that the NHS would be paying for these individuals whether they transitioned or not. So where's the additional cost? And it's going back to this whole lifestyle choice as well. You've chosen to be trans, therefore you have negated your right to have children. It's like, well, no, I've not chosen to be trans. I am trans, and that's not that within that choice of whether to do something about it or not. Whether one decides they're going to live in misery or unfortunately commit suicide, or do something about it. But that doesn't say, well, I'm also choosing not to have children again, or ever. So yes, it's a fallacy. It's not a lifestyle choice, and it's certainly not choosing not to have children. And as for the PrEP, again, we're in the lifestyle choice. It's like, well, you're choosing to have unprotected sex with other men, because of course it's only gay men apparently that can get HIV, not everybody, which actually everyone can. Say, well, you can prevent it with a condom. So, well, actually, there are many other diseases that the NHS pays for that you could argue could be mitigated with changes in lifestyle. It's like, how much does the NHS spend per year on preventative measures to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, the greatest killer in the UK? It's like, diet and exercise greatly reduces your risk. But people don't exercise, they watch the TV, they eat rubbish, they go to their doctor and they're in their mid-50s. Oh, doctor, I'm not feeling so well. Oh, well, your cholesterol's through the roof. Let's prescribe you some statins, some medications to lower your blood pressure. I think all of these could be prevented, but we still give them the treatment. Why? Because they need it. It's like, it's a medical condition. The NHS is there to treat us. So if we're going to treat people for cardiovascular disease preventatively, we should treat for other things preventatively. Talking about costs, it's like, okay, £5,000 a year for this preventative treatment, or do we go for £43,000 a year to treat the HIV? It's a no-brainer in my eyes. And then, of course, it's the whole thing about gay men. It's like, well, actually, women are susceptible to HIV. Trans women are susceptible to HIV. Everyone is susceptible to HIV. If there's a preventative treatment there, probably a good idea. But let's go on to another thing, actually. Preventative treatment that isn't provided is the HPV vaccine. So papillomavirus, a cause of cervical cancer, now a vaccine given to 14-year-old girls at school, not given to the boys. It's like the boys can still carry the papillomavirus, they can still have genital warts, they can still pass it on to the girls. But let's say they've got some gay teenagers, many out there. Oh, but they're still to face this risk of cancer. And it's like, okay, it's not cervical cancer, but a genital wart can easily become penile cancer. So I believe I'm saying a lot of things.
If I could chip in there, I think the thing is it goes back to this fundamental issue, doesn't it? That the Daily Mail, fundamentally, but lots of other organisations as well, they just don't see trans people's healthcare as important as cis people's healthcare, and that's what it fundamentally comes down to. It's like they're quite happy for the NHS to pay for healthcare for cis people, but trans people, well, you know, you want to have kids, but yeah, we don't want you all sort of having kids. And I think it fundamentally comes down to that attitude, and whether it's a conscious attitude or a subconscious attitude. There's that whole piece about, well, if you're really trans, you must be willing to make a sacrifice to be, it must be so. You've got to really want it, kind of thing. And it's
very obvious in the article of the text of the article. It's not even just cis people that the Daily Mail is speaking to. There's a phrase there where to go. They could be helping these patients to change sex and have children. Okay, let's ignore the dodgy language there. While they are rationing basic services such as, now let's think about who they're targeting this phrase at: cataract operations, hip replacements, and hearing aids. Now, I wonder which kind of cis people they're aiming this particular article at. It's clearly not everyone. It's a very specific subset of cis people.
Very good point. Yeah, they're creating this false dichotomy that you have this choice that you can either treat trans people, or you can help the elderly or help young mothers or something like that. And it's a completely false dichotomy. That's not what we're talking about. It's not a case that every pound. Well, no, it's not a case that every pound spent on helping a trans man give birth could build another hospital or something. It's just a ludicrous thing. It's using us, and I think this probably gets us to the crux, actually. Well, the other crux, if that's a possibility, which I'm not quite sure it is. But on the one hand, they're trying to say trans people's healthcare is less important. They're also trying to say we don't really like the NHS very much. How can we have a dig at it? Oh, look, they're helping out all these people that we don't. And I think this was probably one of the points we were going to get to. It's also their way of fundamentally having a dig at the NHS. Because they don't like the NHS very much, because it keeps helping poor people and all that kind of stuff. You can't have any of that.
So,
do you think we are the NHS that help cataracts?
Do we think the agenda here is to portray the NHS badly for political reasons? Do you think we're just collateral damage? Or do you think the Daily Mail is actually genuinely...
I'm sure they're more than happy to kill two birds with one stone here.
Yeah.
So you could argue now, there's reports lately that the Tories could be deliberately trying to sink the NHS into ground to privatise it. The Daily Mail is classically a Tory supporting newspaper. So you could have the kind of conspiracy theorist kind of thing that, yeah, they are sowing the seeds of discord to support this secret policy. It's whether you think that secret policy holds any water or not, or whether that's just some political spin, if you will. But as for their talking about cataract operations and things, and we're taking money away, it's just like, that's not the way the NHS works. It's like, it's all partitioned into separate budgets. So when one budget's spent, you can't then take it from another budget. So trans healthcare, well, then GICs have one budget, eye care has another budget, heart care has another budget, and so they don't generally eat into one another. So it's just, once again, they're showing their ignorance of how a system works.
They do like with these kinds of articles to throw out these sort of big, scary sounding big numbers of money, of pounds. The surgery could cost typically £29,975. Almost £50,000. That sounds like a lot of money to you, to regular people, to you and I. But actually, compared to other kinds of medicine and other treatments which have nothing to do with trans people, or to do with the treatments that would have otherwise been spent on those same people had you not spent this money in the first place, it's actually good value for money. It's just you actually, because the NHS is meant to be free at the point of delivery. When you have one of these articles and they actually put a number on it. The natural reaction for most of us, to be honest, is to go, oh my god, that sounds like a lot of money. So by actually putting that number out there, it just makes it automatically sound scary.
I think that's a good point. I think before we move on as well, one thing I'd like to kind of throw in here as well is that the particular Daily Mail story we're talking about here, the one about trans men and sort of being able to give birth, I don't know if you noticed, and some of us did, that was written by a journalist called Sanchez Watt, who has written in the last 2 years at least, I think we looked at 7 trans-related hit piece articles in the Daily Mail, which, you know, if you look at they write. They write, you know, one every few months, but the only other articles they're writing are kind of quite small, like kind of almost like local news type articles, and yet they're throwing in every now and again one of these front page Mail on Sunday, aren't trans people awful stories, and it just makes you wonder. It's like, does she have some sort of obsession? It's just like, what drives a person to write such regular vitriol towards people who, well, maybe we have. She's pursued around every day by a group of angry trans people, ruining her life. Maybe she's got a perfectly good reason to hate us, but something tells me perhaps not. This is an interesting thing. You know, it seems that we know full well that an awful lot of the vitriol out there in the press is directed at us by quite a small number of people.
Unfortunately,
reflective of a larger.
With a loud voice.
Yeah.
We just have to make sure our voice is louder and more informed.
Absolutely.
So thanks for watching. Next item.
Yeah, so that's what we're here for. We're gonna try and make a difference. This is for us to tell you what it's like for us as trans people, and for everyone listening to join in and be part of nGendr and tell us what you think. So please comment, feed us back, tweet to us, whatever you like. Join in and write something, or join in on these videos perhaps. Our next story we're going to look at is from The Independent, again a week or two ago, reporting that transphobic hate crime has risen 170% in the last 5 years. So there were 215 incidents reported in 2011 and rose to 582 in 2015. At the same time, the number of prosecutions has fallen from 22 in 2014 to just 19 last year. What do we think is happening? Natalie?
Yeah, so, I mean, unfortunately, it's pretty much part of the trans experience to experience some sort of hate crime at some point, even if it's very low level. And actually, you know, what these numbers cause is that things which are actually classified as hate crimes that typically we don't realise are, we probably never dream of reporting. And, you know, I certainly have classified as a hate crime and I've not bothered reporting. I know many of us probably have. I guess that's probably somewhere at the bedrock of this story, is the fact that maybe people are starting to report some of this stuff. So, yeah, from my sheltered position, perhaps it doesn't. I don't know whether it's going up. So my experience has been fairly consistent since I came out, and of course I'm very conscious that I'm not necessarily one of the higher risk groups for getting that sort of abuse. Obviously, you know, white. I'm not middle class, but I just say middle class passing. You know, and I'm not necessarily going to be, and I'm binary, so I guess that's going to remove me from some of the risk groups as well. But yeah, it's hard to say whether realistically the number of crimes is rising. However, there is a very good argument to say that actually with increased visibility comes increased bullying. I don't know what the word is. You know, that low level but still very damaging. People shouting at you in the street, people making, you know, unsavoury comments, perhaps whether they realise you're there or not. Stuff said in the workplace, that kind of thing. You know, you could easily believe that because there's more stuff in the media, that there is more trigger points for people to then jump from and start being a little bit unsavoury. I mean, clearly there's no more of us than there used to be. There's always been a broadly similar number. It's just that perhaps we're more visible than we used to be. But I don't know. What does everyone else think?
Well, you say there's no more, but I suspect, as we know, that, you know, although the number of people who you know, might identify as trans, you know, okay, whether you're sort of made a certain way or not is neither here nor there, but people are more able to come out and express themselves as being trans in recent years than they have done before. Therefore, on that basis, you could say that the number of trans people is actually rising in that sense. And therefore, if something happened to you there, that either the hate crime may not have happened before, because you didn't appear to be a trans person, so therefore you didn't get that attack or whatever, or even if it did happen to you, you might not have thought to classify it as that kind of crime. But so if we have a large number of trans people because people are coming out, then people might be more inclined to report it, just because they now think, well, actually I am trans, so therefore I can report it under this category.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Well, having said that, Robertson, there used to be clearly, to the average punter in the street, they do think there's a lot more of us than there used to be, because they see us more. And of course, they're perhaps more attuned, because more people are aware of our existence. They're looking for it more. So yeah, I think you're right there. Charlotte, you were going to come in. Sorry.
Yeah. So I suppose GIC referrals are up year on year by a very large percentage increase. Now I'm going to maybe swing it the other way. Actually, this is where you kind of think start to ask, right, what questions are being asked and how the statistics recorded, measured, which changes all the time, which can then change the figures in a way you'd not expect. So if numbers are going up to GICs, hate crime's also going up, but is it going up at the same rate? It's not going up at the same rate. In the actual terms, you could actually have a drop. But also, there's a situation of increased reporting, increased visibility, which I think are points that have already been made. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's like, with greater visibility, we can move forward, but we also attract the attention of those that unfortunately are always going to be set against us, sadly.
Okay, so I'm going to read out Sussex Police's definition. Sussex Police define verbal abuse on the street, harassment, physical assault, antisocial behaviour, abusive messages, and domestic abuse as all forms of crime. Can each of us say that we've ever reported that? Because I've been shouted at and I've never reported anything.
No. Can I give you a little story actually that happened to me last night? So, let's say I reported this instance. So I was walking home. I'd been out celebrating a friend handing in her PhD thesis. I chose to completely ignore it. It wasn't trans-related abuse at all. It was probably misogynistic. It was a man kind of accosting me because he found me attractive, and obviously I sidestepped him, ignored him, and just quickened my pace. But let's say I'd reported that as harassment. I then state that I'm a trans person. Does then that get reported as hate crime? So is there something that may be targeted just at me being a woman, but then gets reported as being transphobic hate crime? He might not have even known I was trans. So I don't know if there's also that maybe a compounding factor as well.
So I mean, my one experience is I have been involved in a report of a crime which the police questioned whether it was aggravated by hate crime factors, but I mean, I don't think it was. But they did ask whether there was potentially any if it was race-related aggravating factors, and I didn't think there was. This was many years ago, so it could well have changed since then. So I would suspect in that situation, and if anyone out there is in the police, like things watching or something, then let us know. But I think they would have asked, was anything said that was related to your protected status or anything like that to ascertain whether you thought it was a hate crime? And if there was nothing, then I suspect they would have proceeded on the basis that it wasn't.
Okay.
But I don't know that for certain. That's just what happened in my experience, which is pre-transition, and so therefore that wasn't a factor. But yeah, to Lisa's question, sorry. Yeah, I've experienced that stuff, and I didn't report it, and I wouldn't dream of reporting it because realistically I couldn't, and I should, because I've spoken to a police officer about this, and it's actually it helps them to being able to build a picture. So, for example, if they know that there's hate crimes occurring on a certain street, at certain times, and they think, okay, maybe that if people say, oh, there's kids hanging around shouting stuff, I don't know, on 7 o'clock on a Friday evening, then they might send someone down there at 7 o'clock on a Friday evening to check out if it keeps happening and that kind of thing.
Do you
I've
think
had the
everyone
good
trusts the
fortune to.
police? Do you think everyone trusts the police to report things? Rachel?
Good question.
Do I trust the police to handle things correctly?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I mean, I've had the good fortune, with the grace of God, etc., to only have had a couple of incidents which I would have thought would be worthy of potentially reporting. And one of those was fairly sort of low-level stuff, and I don't think it was anything to do with trans. I think it was, I think I was selected either just because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or perhaps because of my gender, just as a woman, but not to do with being trans. And so that one I did report, and I didn't expect the person to be caught or anything. But again, it was just part of that, helping them just paint a picture of this thing happened. If nothing else, just record a statistic, and just I hope it helps you. I didn't expect it to help me, but if it helps them, then great. The other one was actually the more serious one, and that's the one where, in that case, because there was alcohol involved on the day, I didn't trust that it would necessarily be handled correctly, and that's where I did actually decline to report that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we know there are many groups that don't trust the police and that wouldn't report stuff because they don't feel it would be handled properly, or that they feel that they could even put themselves in danger by doing so. So, the police has got a lot of work to do with certain groups to help them feel that they could report that stuff to the police and that they would help and not hinder the situation. So, yeah, that's definitely going to be a factor. And one thing we didn't, I suppose, probably didn't answer your question fully in was the number of prosecutions thing, actually. So, yes, the number of prosecutions is falling. I think statistically, it was 22 down to 19, was it? That's quite a small number. So I guess perhaps statistically that, what I think really is interesting is the number of prosecutions as a percentage of the number of hate crime reports. Now, I don't know what a typical ratio of crime reports to prosecutions is, so I don't know if this is actually low, but to me it feels low. It's kind of, well, even in 2015, it's kind of, quick maths, it's less than 5%. So it's 1 in 30. So yeah, so that's low. And I guess a lot of them perhaps are these low-level ones we're talking about, where they are just people shouting stuff in the street, and then it's very hard to track someone down. And even if you do, could you hang a prosecution of it? Should you hang a prosecution of it? I don't know. I'm not qualified to say that, but it's quite alarmingly low. And I would suggest that probably quite a lot of them that do get, again, anecdotally, if they get reported, I suspect a lot of them are probably reasonably serious.
A lot of these situations, sadly, are unwitnessed. The perpetrators are often very cowardly. They'll target you when you're alone. They may be alone, or they're with friends that support them. So you end up with a situation of one word against another, and sadly the police can never prosecute on one word versus another. So that'd be another reason why prosecutions are so low compared to reported crimes. But as you said earlier, Natalie, that it helps them get a picture of, that the reports help them shape their response and hopefully prevent some of these instances. I think the only way to really improve this is to improve public education. That's no small task.
Yeah. And actually, there's probably an important factor there as well, that in a lot of cases it may well be someone it might be a neighbour or someone down the street, and by reporting you could be attracting further abuse, and people don't want to do that. So it's a difficult one. It is a very, very thorny issue.
Thank you. So next question we're going to move on to is just this week the Pope, bless him, has released a statement where he's called for the disordered appetite of the depraved transgendered community to the annihilation of man. So he said, today in schools they are teaching this to children that everyone can choose their gender. He added that this was because of persons and institutions who donate money. We are experiencing a moment of the annihilation of man as the image of God. How do we think about the Pope's esteemed words, Rachel?
Well, I have to say I'm shocked. I tell you that a 79, I believe, year old white cis able-bodied man, very 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 wealthy man, has somewhat bigoted views. This is completely unheard of. No, it's not. Of course, it is exactly as expected. Unfortunately, we are as trans people, we are used to being to being singled out as being a group to pick on, and therefore, this is exactly the sort of thing that we would expect. I was reading further down this article on Medium, and I actually quite like the quote that was from a cardinal, Cardinal Raymond's work, saying, anyone at all can change identity and say, today I'm a man, tomorrow I will be a woman. Actually, that sounds pretty cool. I quite like that. Having it that quickly. Then he says, this is truly madness. Okay, well, okay, obviously he doesn't disagree with it. He disagrees with it. Some men insist on going into women's restrooms. This is inhuman. This is a bit of a mental jump. Not only do we have the problems of someone being, obviously very intolerant towards trans people and just not understanding.
Rachel, your quality's gone weird, so you might want to sort that out quickly. But in the meantime, so like this, Rachel's exactly right. It's just, it's an old guy with very conservative views. I know he's meant to be this super pope that is, all progressive and so on, but it just doesn't ring true. I think the problem is, it's easy for us to sit here and say, this, which is exactly what I'm doing now. This, comedic old guy that just saying, unfortunate things. But it's the Catholic Church carries such weight in so many countries, in so many communities around the world that him saying things like he has done in these recent quotes, if you're a trans person in Central Africa or something like that, or in Italy, it's a license for abuse. You've got a really dominant organisation in so many countries saying trans people are there on the shelf to go and pick them off and abuse them. It's really damaging. It really can't be understated.
The literal interpretation is that the Pope is the embodiment, the representation of God on earth, and God's word is gospel. Therefore, every Catholic on earth is to take that as a decree that is the truth, and therefore, exactly, license to abuse, license to challenge, license to cause us untold danger and risk.
Yeah, and let's not lose sight of the fact that there are so many trans and non-binary people that are happily members of the church, and their church is very inclusive, and they've seen so much support from their faith and so on. So it's really unfortunate to see the head of the church, and like you say, messenger from God, saying these things about these people when they're loved members of their churches locally. It's just.
I suppose we should bring up the point here that many of, obviously he's the head of the Catholic Church, but obviously many other churches have their own interpretation of the Bible and their own interpretation of how they treat people. So there are many very LGBT and particularly trans-friendly Christian and other religious organisations that do fully accept and support trans people. It's just unfortunately, the very largest and the head of the very largest seems to disagree. But it's whether he can be debated or whether his word is just taken as the truth and he's not questioned. It's just like
There was an
those
article
of
on
us who aren't Catholic
medium.com
kind
by
of have a
Anne
duty
Hilt.
to. Sorry.
There's an article on medium.com by Anne Hilt that's headline, Pope Francis is inciting genocide. Do we think it's that strong?
Well, as I said, inciting genocide. To me, that says he's actually going out there and doing what Donald Trump does and says, go out there and kill people. He's not. If you were a lawyer, you could say, well, he's not explicitly gone out there and said kill people, but what he has done is he's creating, well, not creating because it already exists, but he's helping to uphold and to further reify a culture and an environment where that stuff can happen without reproach and where people feel that they can go and hurt and kill trans people. So whilst he's not actively calling, he's very passively creating this atmosphere where that's possible. So
it's a comment that dehumanises us. And as soon as you dehumanise a group of people, it's almost, it's seen as not the same as, and therefore it's not as serious if you commit a crime against or even kill someone. It's just like the same way as been done in the past of any incidents of genocide. It starts with the dehumanising of the culture that is to be killed. It's
akin to what we've seen in a lot of media about immigration and the systematic dehumanisation of people, where people are encouraged to blame them for all society's ills, just creates this atmosphere where people are there to be abused and blamed for anything. And it's
countless examples of this in history, and very sadly many of these examples do end in bloodshed.
Yeah. I guess that, the important thing here as well is that it's not as if in many of these devoutly Catholic countries there was a really trans positive atmosphere anyway. So in that sense, it's not making stuff much worse. Well, it probably is making it worse, but it's certainly not helping. And it needs to stop.
An ever so slightly positive slant on it. A lot of the Catholics I know, I've then talked about this subject with them, and they've just said, "Oh, no, we don't pay any attention. Says we shouldn't use contraceptives," and then they take the contraceptive pill. So there are an awful lot of Catholics out there that do use their own ethics and morals and common sense, and I'm thankful for that.
Oh, absolutely. But it's more of a problem where you've got a non-secular country, whatever that's called, where laws. If you look at Uganda, where laws are made on the basis of religious belief and therefore fiercely anti-LGBT legal regime, where comments like this just help.
Yeah.
Or help them, don't help us.
Dehumanising agenda, yes.
Thank you. So the last thing we're going to look at is on Twitter. Last few days there's been a really big hashtag called Being Trans Means. And just as we come to the close, I just wondered if you enjoyed it, what you learnt from it, and if you've got any particular favourites. So we'll just go left to right. Let's go Natalie first.
Okay, I'm on the right, aren't I? So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, it was huge, wasn't it? Like, it was, it went on for over 24 hours. My timeline was absolutely full of it. It was huge, and I'll go with the positive first. So it was great to see lots of people saying what being trans means to them. It was a really good opportunity for people to kind of, it's one of these situations where you expect people, kind of probably not mainstream people, but people with a passing interest in trans issues might have been looking at the hashtag and seeing kind of what was said. So it's a good opportunity to get stuff out there. It's a platform. However, as inevitably always happens with these things, I have two gripes with these things. One is that it gets jumped on by people that have an axe to grind, and we end up with it getting, hijacked by anti-trans people of various stripes. And secondly, it kind of really degenerates into argument. And these things always seem to be, we all know people, know of people who like to have an argument online, and it's almost just like a red rag to a bull. Get on the hashtag, get some people in your mentions, have an argument. So these things often kind of backfire a bit, but on the whole, there was some good stuff on there, and I don't think I have a favourite tweet as such, no. But there was a lot of good little kind of like gallows humour jokes on there. There always is on these hashtags, which I quite like.
Okay, Rachel, do you have any thoughts on it?
I don't know if you can hear me now. Apparently my audio was playing up earlier on. I'll see if it's any better now.
It's all good now.
Good. Yeah, the hashtag. I took part in it sort of to start off with, and yes, I liked the part of the fact that it encourages the sort of visibility of other people's sort of viewpoints and opinions and so forth. I like the the fact that I get to see more diversity of trans life than I do on most days. For exactly the same reason, I like events like Trans Pride as well. Reminding me of that diversity. On the other hand, although I didn't sort of get suckered into any of the sort of big arguments, it does have temptation that, because of the actual choice of tag, being trans means, is that it feels like it's an assertion of correctness. Being trans means doing this. Does that mean you're asserting that if you're not doing that, it's wrong, that you're not trans? Because that's really not it at all. So there is this temptation that if you don't agree with one particular thing that someone tweets, that can cause disagreement. That's part of the reason why I then sort of stopped taking part in that hashtag quite early on, because much as though I enjoy seeing diversity, I didn't want to sort of be seen to be asserting things which people would then disagree with. So I was just happy to just let it ride and just watch, really.
Thank you. And Charlotte?
Yeah, I suppose the thing that I took from it was just seeing everyone's... There's quite a few snippets of stories and people's ways of dealing with them, the resilience. And sadly, there's a lot of people who have encountered some great deal of difficulties in their coming out and their transitions. There's also some very happy stories as well. I think I shared my own kind of difficulties as in you kind of being trans means realising that some of the people you thought loved you don't. But then the next one is but then finding there's a whole load of new people that do. So it's kind of felt a good sense of solidarity, and as Rachel did, I barely touched into it. I just kind of let it wash over, and I certainly didn't go into any arguments. It's definitely not a place for arguments. Everyone's view is valid to them, so even viewpoints I might not necessarily agree with, it's not for me to agree or disagree. It's for that person what being trans means to them. Because it's a unique experience, and every single person's trying to paint us with one brush. That's what a trans person is. It's like there is no such thing as the typical trans person. We're all unique individuals, and everyone's story is different and just as valid.
Okay, thank you. And that is the end of what we got planned for. So let us know what you thought. Tell us what we got right, tell us what we got wrong, and we'll try and do better next time. If you want to join in, either written articles, art, poetry on these videos, please do, especially if you're not a white binary trans woman, because we're aware we're a bit off one balance at the moment. So thanks to Charlotte, to Rachel, to Natalie, and producer Luna, who's operating everything behind the scenes. and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you, and bye.
Bye.